Okay, I'm about to bring on my co-host, who was very instrumental and very much enlightened me about a lot of things. He's become a close friend to me and like a brother. Brother Tariq P. Alexander.
What's up, sisters and brothers? We have a very informative lecture for you this evening with our guest speaker, Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan. Dr. Ben will be lecturing on Africa and Western civilization. For those of you who are familiar with Dr. Ben, you won't be surprised at what he has to say. For those of you who are not familiar with Dr. Ben, I ask that you listen very closely and critique his message and not the messenger. After Dr. Ben lectures, we're going to have about a 35-minute question and answer period. During this question and answer period, I'll ask that you line up behind a microphone here in a single file and that you limit yourself to one question per person. We don't want to wear out our elder. Before I give you the bio on Dr. Ben, I must take this time to introduce some people who've been very instrumental to me in helping me put this program together. They're not members of the police department, but they were very inspiring nonetheless. When I call your name, please stand, and would you please help me by acknowledging them? Mr. Vance Hinton. Mr. Hampton Ricard. And this sister, I have to mention her name. This wouldn't be going on if it wasn't for her. The sister's name is Lorraine Corelli. And also Sister Pat Stevens. I have one more person that I want to acknowledge, and I'm going to ask her to stand. I'm saving it up for last, but by no means is she the least. She's inspired me all through my life. For I owe her everything, for she bared me life. Would you please help me acknowledge my mother, Miss Amy Alexander. Yosef Ben-Jochannan, the son of Julia and Christian Jochannan, the father of 12 biological and 6 adopted children, husband of Gertrude M. England, was educated in the public schools of Brazil, the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, and Puerto Rico. He received a Ph.D. in cultural anthropology in Cuba and a Ph.D. in Moorish history in Spain. He has also received his LLB law degree. Dr. Ben is also an architect. Dr. Ben, as he's so affectionately known, has practiced law in the as assistant prosecutor in Puerto Rico, and has also worked as a civil engineer for both Puerto Rico and the United States. From 1945 to 1970, Dr. Ben was the chief of the African desk of the United Nations Education Scientific Cultural Organization called UNESCO, dealing with the cultural, anthropology, historical, and archaeological information. He's also served as a civilian advisor to the Permanent African Mission of the United Nations from 1957 to 1964. Dr. Ben has taught at numerous universities in Africa, the Caribbean, North America, and also South America. Dr. Ben is presently a professor at Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, recently retired from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. Dr. Ben is the chairman of the Akabulan Foundation, Akabulan Books and Educational Materials. He is an author of 28 published books, 16 unpublished books, and a 6-volume encyclopedia on Africa. Dr. Ben is presently conducting an educational tours to Egypt and the Nile Valley, and is presently directing the archaeological dig in Aswan, Egypt. Dr. Ben recently celebrated his Jubilee year in Egypt, March 1939 to March 1989. Dr. Ben is a special advisor for the festival in Aswan, Egypt, 1991. the first African Nubian festival ever in Egypt. We are most fortunate to be in the same space as this multi-genius, our elder, our brother. I give you Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan.
Good evening, my brothers and sisters. I probably should have started with an African greeting. However, which one should I pick out when we are all Africans and we may have different languages? So to make my lecture all inclusive and conclusive, let me start by expressing my appreciation for the guardians having brought me here to speak to them, and then they will speak in turn to me. Let me start out, since the guardian would protect me, and this is one time when no one will mug me this is the time they should try. I know I will have ample protection. But let us start out with law itself. I wonder why it is that we have to struggle so often in every area of life that we find ourselves. As we go up, and that's a question mark, the harder it becomes. And many people say it's because we are black. Quite to the contrary, it's because they are white. I remember someone told me, as a matter of fact, they asked me, where was I during the blackout? And I said, no place. And he said, how do you mean? I said, there have never been a blackout. And then they tried to tell me what time in New York they had a blackout. And I said, no, they had a light out. If you take off the lights in here, it'll be black, because it was always black. They put light. Black is never out. Black is always in. And so we start to talk about law. But let's talk about law. This is the best place to start with the guardians. From whom do we get the law? Did we get it from someone named Moses? Not at all. That is a Jewish story, allegory. Has nothing at all to do with truth. Now that caused a lot of you problems. Because when we're talking about Moses and the Ten Commandments, where is he getting this Ten Commandments? In a place called Egypt, and the last time I looked at Egypt, and that was last Friday, it was still in Africa. But look, Moses is living in a society where there is law. In Egypt, there was a system of law when Moses allegedly was born around the 18th dynasty. He was born after Akhenaten had already died. There is a set of laws they call the admonitions to Goddess Ma'at, or the negative confessions, out of which Moses adopted 10 out of 42, leaving 32 more. There is a law that Moses himself is charged with, killing, murder, killing the soldier of the Pharaoh. Of course, they don't give us the name of the Pharaoh, but based upon the time period that they're talking, it must have been Ramesses II or his father Seti I, or at worst his son Asakana. He had over 42 sons. Nevertheless, the laws that he's supposed to get, those 10, were already taught for umpteen years. It was taught in the Grand Lodge of Luxor that he went, Luxor, by the way, is Waset. They were taught at the Grand Lodge at Saqqara, where even Abraham wasn't born. Even the name Jehovah didn't exist yet. There was no God named Jehovah, no God named Jesus, no God named Allah yet. When the Africans along the Nile, and in particular at the Grand Lodge of Saqqara, was teaching the concept of law and order. If you doubt me, then they said, the proof of the pudding is not in the smelling, but the eating. You then go and get a copy of the book of the coming forth by day and by night. And that preceded, there was no Genesis yet. I am talking about the book that started before even the dynastic period. That will carry us back to 6,000 before the Christian era. And you will find it there in a section called Osirian Drama. I know that you all using this book since it's a black book, and I'm just trying to refresh your memory. I know that you prefer another book called the Old Testament or the book of Genesis, but before God made the world, I'm talking about when we were making the world. See, since the God that you're dealing with is Michelangelo's cousin, I don't want any of you to get angry, because I was coming through the hall and I saw this blonde man, blue eye, golden hair, not an Italian, and I wanted to know who it was, and somebody said that Jesus. And I said, boy, he certainly changed. From the time you said that he came down with Mary into Egypt to hide from some king up there was planning to kill him, and he's going to hide among all these black folks in Egypt. Now, I don't need to go far, because if he's looking like he looked and hiding among all these black folks, and the king sent his soldiers to find him and can't find him any place, either he's a chameleon that changes with the decor, or he's a brother. Now I know that you all can't accept him as a brother. Michael Jackson can't, and Jesse Jackson can't either. But nevertheless, let's keep going. Law and order, you read them at least every Sunday, Saturday, or Friday, depending if you're Jews, Christians, or Muslims, and other religion, and you are all of these things. Let us go back to even the concept of the only true God that you constantly speak of and fight each other about. You attribute the only true God to either Allah, depending if you're Muslim, or Jehovah if you're Jewish or Hebrew, and Jesus the Christ if you are Christian. If that is so, what happened to Akhenaten's one and only true God, Aten, that was practiced before Moses was born, before there was a Jesus, or before there was anybody called Allah by a person by the name of Muhammad, or Muhammad of Arabia. Law and order, again, let us go. There are natural laws as well as their laws developed by man to deal with the phenomena of life around him, material and otherwise. We tend to call it science, tend to call it mathematics and so forth, but nevertheless, our ancient brothers of the Nile, not only in Egypt, Egypt is the last of the major civilizations along the Nile. It's where the Africans reached their zenith. But the Africans along the Nile call that the law of opposites, that nothing exists without an opposite. So many of you who are talking about, if it were not for the devil, I would be a good person. I would. But I don't want the devil ever to go away, because I would have nothing to check whether or not I'm good or bad, since you talk about the devil being so bad. And it's strange that I have never seen a white devil. Yet I caught hell by the white people from the day one. My first contact with the Greek is trying to bring him out of his cave, and I've paid for it ever since. Professor Clark said, I invited him to dinner and became the meal. Well, let's go on law and order. If I tell my story academically, using all the different highfalutin words to satisfy the other side, it would be appreciated. If I tell it in the language of my people, then it's another thing. But since I don't have a habit of eating downtown, I eat uptown. I'm a Harlem boy. I would have eaten at McDonald's or One Step Down or something if I was a Brooklyn boy. When I come to Brooklyn, you understand. I know you all don't understand where the places I eat because the management and ownership happen to be African, and you people don't eat that kind of way. Now, as we are talking about law and order, it was law and order in the highest degree that make us come up with a language called Meduneta. We came up with mathematical science. The figures you could see, not only at the Grand Lodge of Saqqara, which is basically gone now, but the remains of the Grand Lodge in Luxor. Something bothered me seriously. Those of you who call yourself Masons and Elks and Oddfellows and all that, you can be found constantly all over Israel, Jerusalem and other places. But it's strange that in your rituals you say the Grand Lodge of Luxor is the mother lodge, but you are never in Luxor. You go to Israel where they say, we believe there was a Grand Lodge here. But I am carrying you to Egypt where I don't believe it. I show you, here's the Grand Lodge. You said that King Solomon is the father of Freemasonry. How could it be? How could it be when the Grand Lodge at Saqqara is from 3000 and odd BC, and Solomon is not until 970 BC? You got problems. You have the problems, not me. Because you have to prove to somebody else that you who give to mankind civilization have to wait until a woman named Diane Ravitch tells you you can't listen to Jeffries. But what you have to understand with law and order, I'm still dealing with law and order, is that when you were designing the concept of interstellar space, when you were giving the world symbols, and there's a man just wrote a book against symbolism, you gave to the world that which Europe cannot do without. Let us examine Europe right here in what is called America today, in terms of law and order. We will go to the Supreme Court that dispenses just this. I may need to spell it for you. J-U-S-T, that's one word. And the next is this, T-H-I-S. And you are angry because you don't get just this. You are looking for just this, J-U-S-T-I-C-E. Nobody promises you that. For when you see the scales at the United States Supreme Court building, one scale is up and the other is down. That is just this, not just this. On the other hand, when you look at the justice scene, Gadas Ma'at, in any of the tombs in Egypt or in Sudan or in Ethiopia, you see Goddess Ma'at holding the scale, both scale at the same level. That's just this. You see her with a symbolic feather in her hair, in her head, an ostrich feather. And you see the caption saying, the heart of the deceased must weigh the exact amount of the feather of truth. And then they show you a symbolic animal called Amnut, the head of a crocodile and the body of a lion that is supposed to eat the heart if the heart weighs more or less than the feather of truth. The United States have copied that symbol. The United States have copied another symbol of law and order. Look on your dollar bill. On the upper side, there is the House of Fire pyramid. You see the ever-seen eye of Horus, which you call the evil eye. I mean, the European got you believing that anything belonging to you, something wrong with it. Evil eye. It is the left eye symbolically of Horus. That's the way the story goes. Has nothing to do with evil. And then you see the sunburst, symbolic of God Ra. Like the ancient Africans used everything around him to describe his situation in terms of law and order. It's because of law and order of the stellar space, the movement of the moon, the sun, the stars, and other planets, the African was able to plot their courses, plan their movement, and thus create the first system of marking the movement of these elements, otherwise called a calendar. And I go back to 10,000 BC. That's more than 7,000 years before Adam or Eve or Steve. Now, with all of this, and these aren't prophetic statements by myself from any special work. You can come with me, as others have come. There are many in here who have come with me to Egypt and to Ethiopia and Sudan. And I have shown you where it is. And it's open to the public at large. But then you come back. You come back and forgot that not only did the Africans start at the 10,000 year or stellar calendar, but they revised that and refined it to 365 and a quarter day each year. And thus made what is called the solar calendar, one based upon the sun in relationship to the earth and the moon and else. And that was 4100 before the Common Era, which is stated as the first beginning of the dynastic period. Don't get it wrong that Egypt started with the dynastic period. No, Egypt was reunited during what is called the dynastic period as stated by High Priest Manetho. Again, I refer you to these documents. These are written. They were written before there was a book called Genesis. Written before the first Jew, Abraham, was born around the 13th dynasty, 1700 before the Common Era. Yet we fight each other over being Jewish, being Christian, being Muslim, as if that's important. Here you are, started mankind's civilization. I'm not trying to press you, but frankly, if I want to speak really like homeboy, most of you going to leave. Because if you get in a bar on a Saturday night, that's my language. But of course I got to make it good. The chief is here, I got to show him respect. But I am wondering, we got a black mayor. Somebody told me that. And somebody said was a Wrangell live in a building. I stay when I'm in the States. I stay in a building in rich black peopleville. It's called Lenox Terrace, and Wrangell live upstairs, and I think the mayor live a little way down the street from us. And when the boat came back the day from Israel, I saw Mr. Wrangelstein, and so I said to Mr. Wrangelstein, how is Mr. Deckenberg? And well, it must be because I found that each of them had a yarmulke for each week. But all right, now don't say that I'm anti-Jewish. I was born in the Jewish religion as a falasha, and there were no white Jews yet. Well, you don't want to hear that, I know. But then I wonder, how come we don't have a black police chief? I don't think you're against being chief. You won't be against being commissioner. If you gone that far up, why not the next step? We always got to balance it out. Huh? How come? Why we got to balance it out? Everybody comes in, appoint their people to everything. How come the first... In other words, between her last period and this one, when she noticed she doesn't have a period and she know she was only going with one man, let's call him Joe. If I want to be a little black, I would have called him Mo. Because most black folks men name Mo anyhow. And she became cognizant of the fact that she doesn't have a period, that she's pregnant. But she was only going with this one man. She had an immaculate conception because she knows she could not be pregnant for any other man, because only one man she went with during that period. That was the immaculate conception, and the virgin birth was because if she touched no other man but that same man until she gave birth to a child, that was considered the virgin birth. If you go, don't go with me, go by yourself to Abydos, go into that room. You don't need me to be there. And see how the early Christians tried to chop out the evidence. Go out to all the temples and see how they try to destroy the information that I'm talking to you about and other people will talk to you about. And because we don't know these things, our story, not his story. You know, history was his story. Drop the second S, you got history. But I'm talking about our story, which have not been told correctly since the Greeks came there as students. Let us go back to a little history again and go to dates. Why you think they don't have dates in the Bible? They can't have dates because you will find the lies. I know that you don't like the word lie, but if you're not telling the truth, you're lying. I mean, I'm a simple country boy. I don't know the beauty and the highfalutin words. You understand me? I listened to a minister the other day said, oh wait, I listened to Farrakhan the other day. And he was talking about, we have little bees up here because we had to be thrown in the jungle. Our color got black because of the same thing to protect us from the sun that we originally had straight here. I said, somebody gone sick. I mean, look, there comes a time, you know, there comes a time where we don't play around. I heard a minister said, to me, it's the time of massive ignorance. He said he doesn't pick it and do all these things like most people. I guess like the PBA doesn't pick it. No, they told me the PBA pickets now, only black mayors. And see, I guess you all must have heard that my mouth don't have Sundays. Right? So if I talk about God, so you know I talk about you. When I say God, I mean my father. I talk about God, that's mama. Because somebody asked me, who you pray to? I said, my woman. Black. I had to tell immediately black. Because I don't want nobody got a misunderstanding. But how could you believe in a woman as God? I said, when last you see a man giving birth to anything? In spite of Steve. All right, so you understand that I'm controversial, and you all knew it was controversial. But I got documentation and proof. I could prove it. Everybody in that audience gave birth to anything. I bet you it's a woman. Now, anybody want to take the bet? Anyone wants to take the bet? I give in 20-5. Chief, don't know. I'm not gambling. I'm not gambling. I'm just wagering. All right, we continue. You see, what we have to understand in all of this is when the Greeks came and the Persians are the one that allowed them in, we have to go back and ask the question, for those of you who are doing the stupid dance at college, shuffle dance and talking, I'm a Greek, I'm a freak, I'm a Greek, I'm a freak. Just remember, Greece, there is no Greece until 1000 before the Common Era, BC. And there isn't a single Greek writer until Homer comes to Egypt to learn to read and write. And then, in 833, wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, the first piece of writing out of Greece. There was no, that time Greece was called Pyrrhus. There was no other state in Europe before that either, because Etrusca, now called Rome, was not in existence before 1000 BC either. 1000 BC, the Africans were already in the 19th dynastic period, meaning that they had started a civil war along the Nile and had come back together, had designed and built all the pyramids that you see there. Not a single Jew was born yet. Abraham was born according to Torah in a place called Ur in Chaldea. No better than 1700 before the Common Era. That would be the 13th dynasty. The first pyramid was designed and built by Imhotep in the 3rd dynasty, and the last, the 82nd pyramid, was built at the end of the 12th dynasty. How can you build a pyramid and you ain't born yet? You notice it's not mentioned in Torah. It is Jewish folklore. And let us use it. Even so, your Bible, yours, because you got one right now. Some of you walking in the pocketbook so you don't get hurt. But a star may fall on your head. In your book, it says that Moses got frustrated with the Lord. And he and the Lord had a little altercation. You know who's going to win. And the Lord said, Moses, let me show you how bad I am. Now you know this got to be a bad black Lord. Because when Lords talk about how bad they are, you got to be black Lord. Talking like a real Harlem boy, Bedford Stuyvesant boy. Say, Moses, I'm going to show you a trick. You so damn bad, I'm going to show you how bad I am. The Lord says, stick your hand in your bosom, and I show you a miracle. And the book said what? And he pulled his hand out, and it had turned white. Stop. If it was white when he put it in there, and it had turned white, the Lord was jiving. It didn't say it was black, but we know it wasn't white. Now, to make sure, I'm not talking about white folks. His sister Miriam got smart. And she gonna act up. I don't want you to marry that girl from Ethiopia. Now, this is your book. It's strange I'm quoting your book, and all of you got a white Jesus in your house. Most of you, not all. And Miriam said, look, Moses, you can't marry that girl. She ain't with. He said, look, those girls up in Ethiopia are ours. And he went out and got married because Moses was a good man. He had a couple. He married nothing but holy girls, high priest daughters. He said, Miriam, I'm going to show you the Lord. What? Lord again. And he turned her what? White with leprosy. Now, these are two members of the Holy Family turn white. Are we to assume that the parents was white if they turned them white? Well, we get off the Lord because you're going to get mad and I want you to go home and sleep. So, we leave the Lord for a while. But where do we get it? Where do we get the story of Moses? A copy from the stories of Horus. Horus, the young boy who the king wanted to kill, the king of the gods, wanted to kill, and his mother, a set which you call Isis, not the blonde one from Hollywood, took him down to the same Nile River, put him in a papyrus basket. Hundreds of years, thousands of years later, the Jews copied the story and changed it. I should change it, the Haribo, because Jew is a member of the tribe of Judah. But you swallowed hook, line, and sinker. We got to look at how we are damaged mentally. Let's go to church tomorrow, Sunday, and we're going to sing, "Make me whiter than snow, O Lord." Now, you may be, because you may be lighter than me, you got a chance, but how the hell I'm going to get whiter than snow? But it isn't bad enough. You're going to get more ridiculous than that. Wash me in the blood of the Lamb, and I'll be whiter than snow. No, I'm black like this. Then you wash me with red blood, and I become whiter than snow. You're crazy. But they can tell you that, and you find nothing wrong with it because you don't know yourself. You don't know your history. And that's when you come and tell me that umpteen white cops start to shoot, and you get a stakeout with white cops and one black one, like all the other black ones used to be shot up on 7th Avenue all the time. Every time a cop gets shot by mistake, it's a black cop. The funny thing is that some of us don't see it, nothing wrong with it because it's a cop. And we separate ourselves from the cop. But look at yourself. You are that cop. You don't have to be in a police force, because when they shoot a black cop, they will shoot a black porter, a black president, a black engineer. We have to understand what the totality of the struggle that we have is not classified by profession or by class. There's a man named Lewis just died the other day. 500 million on one transaction, but still they were doing him in. You know, when I was at Cornell teaching, other professors used to say, "But Ben, you never say our university." I said, because there's no our, it's the university. I work here. And every 2 weeks they pay me. If they don't, I raise ass. You understand? I never got the opinion to believe this is mine. because of knowing my history down through the ages of what happened. It's like celebrating Columbus Day. Cristobal Colon. I remember Columbus because I remember at the same time an Englishman, Burton, who found the source, he discovered the source of the Nile. Africans bringing his luggage up the stream, one in front guiding the group. Come, Burton, come, here it is. The indigenous people you call Indians, and the damn fool didn't even know there wasn't Indian. Columbus set out with Pietro Alonso Nino, the admiral of the fleet of 5 ships, because the Moors ruled Spain from 711 to 1485, and it was his ship. He was placed in command of the ship. Columbus was only placed in command of the expedition. And we seem to forget that he even considered Cuba Cipango, Japan. That's dumb Italian. They say you shouldn't say Italian, and you shouldn't say a Jew from Texas. But they say a black, a Negro, a colored, a nigger from so and so. But why can't we say? We say ghetto. We live in the ghetto. Did we coin the phrase ghetto at NYU? No, we didn't. All of these things. We talk about what? In the diaspora. Did we coin the phrase diaspora? Who did it to us? Because again, we did not know our history. If we knew that the first building built by man out of stone was an African in the 3rd dynasty, again we come to the Pharaoh Zusa, the third pharaoh of the 3rd dynasty. Where was Europe during those days? History has no record of Europe in those days. No records of the Arabs in those days. There were no people there on that peninsula called Arabs. They were called Saracens. The Saracens were the people at the peninsula now called Arabs. People who come down from the Caucasus Mountain, the Caucasus Mountain, integrated, and that's an ugly word, amalgamated, another ugly word. They raped the women down there. Don't talk it. Every time white people rape, it is integrated, amalgamated. Every time they got TB, it is a deep cold, pneumonia. I get a little cold, TB. But you see, I don't worry because knowing self, I walk with my head up on cloud 9. And I walk with my head up on cloud 9. You think it's because I'm looking for the rain. No, I'm looking where I left my woman. On cloud 9. You put 1,000 pipers on the top shelf. I put 1,000 black women on the top shelf. You got a problem finding a good black woman. I got a problem getting away from good black women. And the reason I have that problem is that I love this. My daddy was a wise man. He picked out a woman that got this so that I could come this way. When I go to the hospital, I never ask, I want to see what my child look like. I know what a child look like. Because if I go up there and he look like that, he ain't going home. Why? Why is that? I know that because when I was performing medical science, go back to the papyrus of Huneva, go back to the Evers papyrus, dealing with Planned Parenthood. You hear what a guy named Clinton that fell up there, He's supposed to be dealing with an order to tell a woman she got a right to deal with her body. I thought that was any jackass knows that a woman's body belongs to the woman. But I mean, it take a president to figure that out. Maybe come to the conclusion with blowing the job in the socks. Now, it is a good instrument. It is a good instrument to be blowing when he's considering women's reproductive organs. Now, because there's a medical paper called, listen to this, the Rockefeller paper. When did the Rockefellers get a paper in ancient Egypt? There is another one called the Goodfellow paper, the Edwin C. Smith paper. When did Edwin Smith and Rockefeller? This is thousands of years before there's a European country. They are the thieves, like in the museums here. What would happen if the Africans take their artifacts out of the museums in Europe, in America, both Americas?